pinned a great deal of hope and anticipation on that the recommendations we made would be delivered. She was very vague and nothing further was heard. And indeed, as I recall it, nothing further was heard at all by myself. So that was not a happy experience either of engaging.
Now, did this expert, Alexis Jay, really expose the Tories on child protection? Now, this was in the Home Affairs Select Committee meeting on the 21st of January 2025, where they were discussing the implementation of independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, where the witnesses were Professor Alexis Jay and John O'Brien, who both were respectively the chair and secretary into the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse. Well, Bell Ribeiro-Addy asked Professor Alexis Jay this question, and what she had to say was very, very interesting.
Thank you. And what was your opinion of the responses from the then government and other institutions into the final ICSA report?
From October the 20th, 2022?
Yeah.
That was when the final... Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Okay. So that was the end of the process when we finally launched the final report. It wasn't the first time we published recommendations, of course, because we had done that in the course of the entire inquiry, which I would commend to others to do, rather than wait to the end to do everything. But so we had, I think, apart from the 26 of which we had repeated because we did not consider the initial response when they had been part of an investigation report, considered the response to the institutions concerned, including government, we didn't consider the responses to be adequate. So we repeated those, added others, and in addition to that, we had 87, I think, from the previous... No doubt if you're interested, we'll come on to that. But, of course, the response initially from... There have been a lot of Home Secretaries in the course of this experience. At that time, the Home Secretary was Grant Shapps, and he made a very supportive statement in the House, and we were much encouraged by it. However, I think that was probably the high point of our experience with the last administration, because Mr. Shapps wasn't there within a couple of weeks. It was the next person, Ms. Braverman. Or yes, it was, wasn't it? 7 or 8 that were there. But it was awful. I cannot tell you how it felt to constantly read the response when we got the final printed version of the government's response. It was inconsequential, insubstantial, committed to nothing. And the wording that was used very often amongst the 20 recommendations was we accept the need for whatever it was, but made no specific commitment to delivering it or any timescale whatsoever at that stage. And the reaction of all of us, but mostly victims and survivors, was such huge disappointment and anger at what they had pinned a great deal of hope and anticipation on that the recommendations we made would be delivered.
Thank you very much.
Yes. So when you see these crank Tories, coming on shows saying that they did all they could to implement these recommendations, I suppose you could just show him this video and say to them, are you calling Professor Alexis Jay a liar then? Because it's not her viewpoint, is it? Now, this is where she really shows how interested not only Number 10 was, but the Home Secretary, Leaky Sue, was when it came to the protection of children.
I can give you more detail on what that process of attempted engagement was like, but only if you're interested.
Yeah.
Are you sure? Yes. Okay. I did actually have a note of all of the various dates where we attempted engagement, and there were many, and ultimately it was, of course, with the Survivors Trust and others that we have tried to gain the support for implementation of the recommendations. But it's been nearly 2.5 years now from the time that we launched the final report. But there were a number of occasions where we heard from officials that they were attempting to take things forward, but unfortunately that it never had any outcome. We rarely had follow-up to some of the discussions, and there weren't that many because there were long periods of time where nothing happened, and there was no contact with me or indeed with the victims and survivor organisations about what should happen or our opinion on how to take things forward. Now, I proposed at one stage, I think it was in May or April or May 2023, that there should be a small grouping formed to follow up, to act as a monitor, if you like, on what was happening. And I wrote to the Chief of Staff in Number 10 and also to the Home Office about this idea. It didn't have to be expensive. We'd just meet regularly and check what was happening. I got no response. And I also it was suggested to me I should discuss it with the Home Secretary at the time, when it was prior to the final printed account of the government's response, and I did raise it with her, and she was very vague and nothing further was heard, and indeed, as I recall it, nothing further was heard at all by myself until the next Home Secretary came along, and that was later in the year when Mr. Cleverly was appointed, and I wrote to him saying perhaps we could reset this relationship and try to move things forward.
There you go. Even when she asked Number 10 and Leaky Sue about setting up a small forum group to follow up and act as a monitor on what was happening, nothing, radio silence. I mean, chances are our little Rishi was too busy gobbling off our tech bro space Karen, and our Leaky Sue was probably being as racist as fuck as you possibly could in the Tory graph at the time. But this is where things get really juicy. When she tells a story about after she had wrote a piece in the Times. Don't ask me why it was the Times, but that's what she did. And it shows you it's very, very enlightening.
And he was very amenable, and we did have a couple of meetings with him, and he attended an event in January of last year that we organised here to try to raise interest in this. I just wanted to mention one other aspect of all of this. In the end of May, after we'd seen the published response of government, myself and the 3 panel members from the original inquiry wrote to the Times newspaper saying how upset and distressed so many people were after all this time and all the energy, and the response felt disingenuous. It appeared to promise something, and in fact there was no substance to it. So that was our public statement of what we felt about what had happened. I was on holiday, and I had a call from, or I had a message that somebody wanted from the Home Office wished to talk to me about how we could take the recommendations forward, and I thought that's great. Well, maybe this is a chance. This was in June. We'd sent the letter to the Times in May, and what then happened, which I thought was improper, was a special advisor came on demanding to know why I had written to the Times and complained, and I was very clear that I was not accountable to this person as an independent chair for any actions at all. And I did have ideas about how we could take things forward if they were willing to listen. So that was not a happy experience either, of engaging and trying to push for these recommendations, which are much needed to go forward.
Now, Professor Alexis Jay did speak highly of both Jess Phillips and James Cleverly, and he did seem to want to engage more, but let's be honest here, the Tories clearly have shown no interest in protecting vulnerable children at all, have they? Just jumped on the Space Karen bandwagon, didn't they? But what do you guys think? Let me know down below, and if you enjoy everything else of Commons and Select Committee meetings, and there's more to come from this one, so I suggest you like and subscribe, and I shall bid you farewell and take care, my friends.